My name is Luciane. I'll present Cynthia. We are going to spend a little time together. She's very excited. And he will talk with us. Cynthia Schwarzenberg is from Atlanta, Georgia. She has studied with David Brain since 2001 and been a part of the Brainspotting community since 2003. She practices psychotherapy in Atlanta, Georgia, has recently become a trainer in Brainspotting, and is heading the Southeast Brainspotting Institute. She has spoken at the International Society of Trauma and Dissociative Studies, and in Vienna on Brainspotting and grounding. Prior to working with Brainspotting, she was an international teaching for the Institute of Core Energetics, teaching on the mind and body connection, and one topic specifically was grounding. She brings to us the example of Brainspotting and an integrative model with grounding in Brainspotting as an integrative, and will lead us in a deeper understanding of how it's to be grounded as a Brainspotting therapist, and to help our clients ground through the lens of Brainspotting. So she's an expert in grounding.
Except when I have to give a talk. So thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Thank you guys for coming. So I really want to make this an alive experience that we can all get involved with and make it more like a conversation around grounding than me sitting here and talking. So I'm going to probably stand up as well as sit because I don't just like to sit. And also because I'm so low, you probably not sure you can see me. So how many of people are working with grounding in their sessions when they're doing Brainspotting? Great. And how many of you do come from a body-centered somatic experience in your work? Okay, great. So it gives me an idea of just where we'll be working from and talking from. Some things may be repetitive, but what I'm wanting to do today is to really integrate and look at the model of Brainspotting, which is naturally a grounding model, and what aspects of it. Specifically, we'll be looking at the attunement piece, we'll be looking at the uncertainty, and we'll be looking at different exercises and when and what to use in a session. The thing is, because in Brainspotting everything is so innate and intuitive, I can't really tell you what to do when. But I can give you some, like a toolkit that you can take and resource from when and how it feels appropriate in your sessions. Okay. Am I talking too fast for anybody from a different language? Okay. Thanks. So, what we're going to cover, I'm not sure, how am I going to know when to move the slides? Oh. Okay, so I think it's the next slide. So what we're going to cover is grounding and looking at it from the place of electricity. We are electrical beings. Our bodies are electrical bodies. Our hearts beat. They can be measured with an electrical current. In our brain, there's so much happening so rapid and so quickly that actually it could light up a light bulb for 15 to 20 watts at any given time. So to begin to, when I think of grounding, I think of myself as an electrical current that needs to be grounded, much like the electricity that's running through my house. Sometimes we use the expression like I blew a fuse, but also from the place of thinking about where am I in relationship to the earth. Like in our cell phones, there's a mechanism in there that keeps it grounded. So too, as we as human beings need to continuously find a way to ground us. And a lot of research and talk is coming out about how we're so electrically connected, through the internet and through the phones, that we don't really have much time for being with the earth. And also the way our shoes are they're not very grounding. So they suggest that people put their feet literally on the earth for about 15 minutes a day. The other thing I read recently is that there's therapies where people literally are taking people out into the forest therapy. We need to hug a tree, we need to be on the earth, we need to ground ourselves. And the importance to the work in grounding and brain spotting is what we'll be looking at today. So the other expressions that sort of come to mind and thinking about ourselves as electricity is being in relationship with another person. So if I'm in an electrical current and I'm with you, like your electrical current is mingling with my electrical current. Sometimes then, there's certain people that you get excited when you're with them, and sometimes you feel drained. Well, our currents, and we talk a lot in brain spotting of being in the field with somebody. From the moment we sit in session with somebody, we've created this field of connection. So we'll be thinking about that in terms of the interconnection that happens. When I am with somebody, my presence is a strong impact and effect on them. So part of my thoughts are, I as a brain spotting therapist need to really keep working with myself to be a tuning fork, to be an instrument for my work. So I think of that also in terms of the vibes that I give off, the presence that I hold, and we certainly know that in session when we're talking about that empathic, attuned presence, and David mentioned that when he was talking about the resource model before. So, okay. So we're working with the wisdom of the body and tracking the body and the awareness as we work in brain spotting. So it's a body-brain, mind-body-brain therapy. So we've been talking a lot about the brain, but I really want us to remember the body, and that when we are sitting with people, what we are tracking are the reflexes, the subcortical messages that are coming from the body. And we are also working with coherence in terms of, and today we talked about that sympathetic, parasympathetic balance. When we're looking at working with people, we're working within a window of tolerance. Or when they get out of that window of tolerance, how do we help support them to kind of come back in? And a lot of that will be in relation to grounding and tightening up the frame and the focus. So what exactly is grounding? So I'm going to ask you guys also to tell me, is this on? Okay. When you think about grounding, what do you think about? Does anybody want to say? No? Okay.
Grounding are the brakes, like this.
The brakes?
Yeah, when somebody's, how can I say, too high, when you ground them, you put the brakes to the
So it's like to put a pause or to put a brake on them.
yeah.
Thanks.
A centering.
A centering. Okay. Roots. Calming. Yeah. Feeling to be carried by the ground. Great. Presence. inside the body, the homeostasis, electrical homeostasis in the body.
This is like a spelling test.
Okay. Any others that we want to add? Okay, so we also, is to be embodied presence, which we have mentioned, experiencing our lives in the here and now. So, in trauma, when we're working with people, and they're in flashbacks, it's hard to differentiate between the past and the present, because the past seems like the present seems like the past. So I often talk about it as like these two slides that come together, the past and the present. So when we're working with people, we're helping them to differentiate out, like that was then and this is now. So that's a very good way of help, just in our languaging, for bringing some grounding to them. Where we are now in the present moment in our bodies through our senses. So working with our senses, and we'll keep talking more about that. We grounded in the experience of our bodily sensations. So really being here and now, having a sense of our physicality, our mind, our spirit, so that we kind of have some awareness of being in the present. We feel connected to the earth through our bodies, to our spirit. We can feel our breath, to feel a sense of a pulsation. And in terms of a backbone, I think of that as like, I feel like that's anchor and that support of my back. And sometimes I also think of it as like, who's got my back? Like, who's supporting me? And who's in my life now that's really right there with me? And I can also think of it as my lineage. It's all part of my backbone. It's part of my structure. And we can really include in that, our whole, all systems of the body. Our skeletal system, our muscular system, our nervous system, our digestive system. And being in connection is actually our birthright. And David talked about Porges' work in terms of our social engagement. It's a natural instinct for us to connect with other humans, for us to bond. And our place in the world, we have a sense of where we belong and what our purpose is. And often people have come to me because they don't know exactly what, but they just feel lost. They don't have, it's not because of, a fight with the husband or the girlfriend or with this or with that, but it's just that very general sense of being lost in life. So those are the things with grounding, but also in terms of grounding, I think of the points in the body, specifically the skin is a very important grounding spot. When the mother is holding the baby and looking into the eyes, in core energetics, we used to talk about key points of grounding, being the eyes, the hands, and the feet. But every time I think about that dual attunement slide that we show in the trainings, I see that eye gaze and that connection, but also the holding container that's created and the skin-to-skin contact. So, in terms of the senses, to bring in all our senses, and we'll talk about some exercises and ways of doing that. So when I am aware of myself in relation to my environment, so that's where like touch and contact, like where I'm sitting on the chair, feeling my back against the chair, feeling my legs under the chair, that's all part of it. So I'll just even ask you right here, right now, while you're sitting here, notice how connected you feel in this very moment. And take a pause to just feel your connection to your body in the chair, to feeling your feet on the ground. And and that sense of I am and I am here. Okay. So, in terms of the ungrounding, this is where people come and they feel like they're kind of floating in life, or they're kind of klutzy and they walk into things like there's a poor sense of relationship to the environment. Now, sometimes that might be just the way your visual field is, and there's some people that do certain eye exercises that actually do help with giving you glasses that are, I forgot the word, prism lenses that help adjust that. So there are certain doctors out there now that work with eye exercises that are not just for our eyes, glasses in terms of our prescription to see, but also in relation to our visual field. I used to know a man that had worked with, and he has since passed, but he had worked a lot with eye exercises with children with autism, and also with people who like consistently, like instead of walking straight, they walk to the side. So sometimes I feel like I'm beside myself. I don't really feel in myself. I don't feel connected to myself. Or I feel a little spacey, or I fantasize. I live in a lot of storytelling that's not really very relational or in the present, or I'm absent-minded. Maybe I'm the absent-minded professor. Or we're overthinkers, especially, so we think a lot in our minds, and our minds get very loose and busy. Can you think of other things in terms of ungrounding?
One thing I've noticed is kind of an us-them mentality.
Us-them mentality, yes.
Sort of perceptual distance from the relatability of others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that really goes into the attachment stuff. Yeah, it's like everybody but me.
Yeah.
So I separate some people.
It really scattered.
Right.
Racing thoughts in terms of, you have too many, kind of what you're saying, but it's like racing.
Yeah, your thoughts are buzzing really fast, right? Great. Okay. So this is really what most of many clients feel when they come to us. But there's also many times during the session that people will get ungrounded, and we'll go a little bit more into that. Okay, so grounding and brain spotting. So the goal is to use an intervention of grounding later versus sooner. And this is where the art of being a brain spotting therapist comes in, that we will not rush in too fast to try to fix or change or take care. And I was thinking when David was presenting about the fight, flight, and freeze, and then mentioned porges, I thought, oh, gee, I wonder if that's where our social engagement is like to quickly go and help somebody and rescue them. The body doesn't lie. We work with the body sensations that awareness alone is grounding. You know, when we ask somebody for the body felt sense, where do you feel most grounded, calm, connected in your body? When we're starting the work, that alone is very grounding. Okay? And of course, the dual attunement is a relational and a biological model. So we're working both biologically, we're constantly tracking the system, the person's tracking their own system. And I think part of the gift is that we are giving them support to begin to track themselves and come grounded into themselves. You know, the people that you say, well, notice your foot on the ground, and then they come back the next week and it's like, wow, I've been noticing my feet on the ground. I never noticed that before. You know? And for many of us, we may take it as if that is the way it is. Okay. So the aspects of grounding in a session. The client in relationship to themselves, to the parts of themselves, but also in terms of bringing them into their body, but also us as therapists. So David talked about that fight, flight, or freeze when he was talking about the limbic system. So when we're in session with somebody, we are really working subcortical to subcortical. So things that may come up in a session are going to trigger us. So what do we do and where do we go with that? One of the key things I think of, and you guys can share what you think, is just to frame it for myself and go, oh, I need to bring that into a session. I need to brain spot myself about that. I need to take that to supervision. Like, I know I'm going to not stop it here. So staying attuned to the client and how our energies shift. And also just trusting the process. Like when I am sitting there with a clear sense that I believe in this process, I've seen it over and over, and I trust it. I think that we're putting that in that field, that electrical field that I spoke about before. So that is extremely grounding for us and for the client. So we're to stay focused in their body. So when I say a touch point, what I mean by that is for you to have some point in your own body that you can come back to, where you can feel grounded, calm, connected. So many places that are like yoga and other modalities talk about the dantian, which is about 2 inches below your belly button. And another teaching I once took literally called it the grounding spot. So if you just bring your awareness back down here, 2 inches below your belly button, and take a few deep breaths, that can also be a spot. Or sometimes I'll just bring my awareness into how I'm sitting in the chair, or my foot on the ground. So it's like a way for you to find a touch point for you to come back to yourself. And staying in attunement with the client. And sometimes that we can do that also by, getting more curious with them. And it also help to increase the grounding and connection. So what I want to do now is I'm going to read to you the principles of brain spotting. But I would invite you, because you guys know this, to just gently close your eyes or find a spot to focus your eyes on, and notice how you get affected and feel when you hear these principles that we all embody and that ground us in our work. So grounding in the basic concepts in a session that we come into our sessions with is our innate wisdom of the client to heal themselves. Kind of breathing into your body and noticing how that lands inside your body, knowing that you really live with this principle of the innate wisdom of the client to heal themselves. What I know is I know nothing. Just being with that awareness, that as you sit with that truth of what I know is I know nothing. Notice how that feels in your body. And I work within a dual attunement model. I work in a dual attunement model. Like we say these things all the time, but really feeling your connection to it. And if you want to write a word or two down before we come back to copy, feel free to do that. If something came up for you. But these are the principles as brain spotting therapists that we're grounded and connected. And it kind of connects all of us together, right? So I know when I'm in my office that you guys are in your office, sort of like when David White had us hold our fingers up, that we're all connected and we all go by these basic principles, which is a gift when we also wanted to refer to each other. So, did anyone want to say what came up for you around that? So when you get triggered in session, these are also principles to ground yourself in. So like we talked about the body part, but these are also concepts that we really body. Okay. So let's talk about grounding from the points of the session that we use it. So we can work with grounding and kind of the integrating grounding techniques into different parts of the session. We'll start with the end of a session. It's a great place for everybody to use this, whether you're working with DID or not, but especially, people are going out back into the world, into their families, so there may be times of needing to ground them. Oh, thank you. The other day I was working with a man who had done some very deep process work with a part of himself. He grew up in the slums and he had a lot of trauma, and he was working with that part that was really hidden, that he didn't want anybody to see because he had to have this facade of like this really tough guy, but he's an amazing heart. So towards the end of the session, he was able to feel his adult self, but he hadn't fully come out of it. The time was kind of up, and he said, I'm not fully here yet, which is an expression maybe you have seen. So what I had him do while he was sitting down was very slowly moving his opposite arm with opposite leg. And thinking and bringing a lot of mindful awareness to it. So I said to him, pick up your left leg and your right arm and think about what you're doing. And then your right leg and left arm, very slowly thinking about what you're doing. And he did that for a few times. And then I literally had him walking around, kind of sitting low in his legs, so he had his knees bent, like a Neanderthal guy, and just very slowly putting your heel to your toe and putting opposite arm, opposite leg, and then switching and thinking about what you're doing. You guys can do it right where you're sitting right now if you want. So pick up and I'll do it like as if you were like in the session. So pick up your left, and really think about what you're doing. Pick up your left foot and your right arm. And then putting it down slowly and picking up your right foot and your left arm. And just really thinking about what you are doing. And again, your left foot and your right arm. Thinking of bringing all your mindful awareness into your movements. And just gently keeping your eyes focused on the spot in front of you. So you can keep your eyes at half mast as you do it, and you rotate. Good. So what that is it's cross-patterning, much like a baby learns to crawl before they learn to walk. And we're working with the right-left side integration in the brain. So one time I was going on a kayak trip, and right before the trip, there was a bar in the store, and I was bent down, and I came up, and I hit myself on the head. And then I was like, ow, that hurt. It's like, great, now I'm going for 3 days out of the water. So when we go out into the water, the instructor says, go to the right, and I'm going to the left. And then he says, go to the left, and I go to the right. And I realized that I was switched between my right and my left. So when we stopped for lunch, I said, I got to unswitch myself. So I did this a few times, and he didn't believe me. So we go back in the water, and when he said, go to the right, I went to the right. And then he was obviously testing me. But I'll do this also with people who have the ADD, ADHD, for helping people or people who have organizational issues. It really does help to do the cross patterning in terms of getting grounded. So in the middle of a session, during the session, to strengthen the connection to the here and now, it's HERA, okay. So I may say, just very gently say to somebody, bring your awareness into your foot. Like I may not have found a resource spot in the very beginning. If we did find the body resource spot in the beginning, I will bring them back to the body resource spot. But sometimes you're just flowing into, the way, especially like with gaze body, you kind of just flow into a session and you maybe didn't set it up. So I'll pick a spot for them. And I sometimes will differentiate between a grounding spot and a resource spot. Because a grounding spot is to help me get back into the here and now. It's not necessarily coming from when you're thinking about the issue, where do you feel most grounded and connected in your body. So I'm not attaching it to the issue. So that's the way I differentiate the two. Or sometimes I may just say, feel your connection to the earth, and I may do a pause in helping them reconnect to the earth. Parts of their self holding themselves. So right now, just put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And you can notice how that feels. And then I may say to them, you can bring your bottom hand kind of up to the top of your head. You put it on your forehead. You want to kind of connect. This way you're kind of connecting them back into their heart and into the sense of holding themselves, and then put it back down onto your belly. And the body in relation to where we're sitting, it's just like, notice how you're feeling. Can you feel the chair under you? So I bring their awareness into a body felt sense. So can you feel your leg touching the chair? Or sometimes I'll say, can you notice your thumb? Like people will hold their hands and they're rubbing their thumb. Notice your thumb rubbing, your right thumb rubbing your left hand, or notice your right hand holding your left hand, or notice your hand on your leg. But wherever you see that there's some contact that they innately are doing, to bring their attention into it. Working in the middle of a session, this is where we also are working with tightening the frame. I was working with a woman, and she was a mother of 3 children, very, very busy, very agitated, had ADD, ADHD, very anxious person. And when she would come in, she would rapidly tell her story, and she thought she was very angry with her dad. So what I started to do even in the beginning, and this is all part of the framing and the focusing, what we do is we inquire to kind of help somebody see exactly what they're even talking about. So I would just ask her some questions of like, well, when you say that, what exactly are you saying? Because I want to show her that I'm curious, I'm engaged with her, and to also help her conceptually ground. So that's another piece that where we're working with grounding brain spotting in the way we set up the frame and the focus. And then during the session, she felt like she was getting very dizzy. So I just had her, because we already had set up what's called a God spot, I said to her, well, why don't you see if you can go to your God spot and notice what happens. And does everybody know what a God spot is? Okay. So a God spot is a spot that there's certain people that are more religious or connected to God, the God of their understanding. She happened to have been a very strong Christian, so she had a very strong connection to Christ. So what we had done in one session was I helped her find when you're thinking and feeling your connection to God, notice what you feel in your body. Notice that sense of being grounded and connected in your relationship to God. And as you're noticing that, where do you feel at the strongest in your body? And let's see if we can find an eye position that connects to that. And then I have a number of people that will work with that when they get over dysregulated in their lives during the time in between, and in this case even in session. It's a very wonderful way of them grounding because they have such a strong connection. Or for people with addictions, you can use your higher power spot. And some people will be talking about that this sometime during the conference. There's a presentation on it. So she found that spot, and once she found that spot and she got regulated, kind of came back in the window of tolerance, her foot started to tap. And so I just said to her, allow your foot to do whatever it needs to do. And I would often use that expression as a way to really bring the body work into the brain spotting. And she just started to kick, and then she started to scream. And this is somebody who just felt very restricted, was never allowed to express her anger. And she was, going in and out of being embarrassed about it, but okay about it. And it really, that one session changed her life for her, in terms of her starting to be able to stand up for what she needed to say and standing up for herself and releasing a lot of the anger that had been so locked in her history. So that's where we can interweave it during the session. Make sense? You guys have comments or thoughts about this and the end of a session or in the middle for yourselves? You want to add? Okay. So the focused breathing is any place from saying, did you notice the breath that you just took? Was that spontaneous or was that intended? Or we may need to say, just begin to become aware of your breath and the sound of your breathing. Bring your awareness into and I'll say to see people, just notice the breath kind of going in and out of your nose. Because that can be very soothing. And when we bring attention to something that's more resourceful, it's a brain state change, which is very grounding for people. And then at the beginning of the session, we can do a number of different things to help to establish the relationship to you and to themselves. So I'm working with various segments. So the body, you can think of in different segments, and we'll go into that in a minute, but I'm going to just start with the feet. So a good way in the very beginning is to kind of help somebody get rooted and grounded, is to just have them wiggle their toes in their shoes, and then rock between your heel and your toe, and then scuff your feet, and then rotate one foot and then the other, your ankles. And then you can even, while they're sitting, have them do up into their knee. And then they can also tap down their legs a little bit. But once they get into their feet and their foot, I will ask them, how does your foot feel in your shoe or your sandal or whatever they're wearing? And just notice the sense of your skin touching your shoe. Notice your shoe on the floor. Now, Ruby Gibson wrote in a book, My Body, My Earth, a detailed outline on earth breathing, of going all the way through the floor to the foundation, to the soil, to the different layers of the earth, and back up again. So you can go through all of that or any variation of it. And I'm not sure whether she does this or not, but usually what I'll do with people, having them go down to the center of the earth, and when it comes back up, feel coming up through your left foot, and then your ankle, your leg, your hips around the base of your spine and down the right. And that's because we often receive with the left and we give with the right. And helping them to make that connected loop. Do you want me to say the whole series? Or do you guys, okay. So I'll do it with you. How's that? Okay? So put your feet flat on the ground. Close your eyes or, half gaze so that you're focused on the spot in front of you. And as you're breathing in and breathing out, just sort of wiggle your toes in your shoes. And very gently rock your foot between your heels and your toes. And then press on the outer edge of your shoe, so the outer edge of your foot, and then press on the inner edge. And notice your breathing as you press on the outer edge and on the inner edge. And as your foot comes flat again, get to feel your foot in your shoe. And notice you're kind of press into your feet so you can get that sense of your foot on the ground. Breathe in, and when you breathe out, really press your feet into the ground. And then relax it as you breathe in. And then as you breathe out, really press in. And then kind of scuffle your feet. Back and forth really fast. And then just relaxing your foot on the ground. Just kind of sensing in the base of your foot, maybe around your arch, a sensation that helps you feel your foot on the ground, and that you can kind of sense from there the floor. And below this floor is the foundation of the building. So breathing in and out, sensing your foot in your shoe on the ground, the floor in relation to the foundation of the building. And below the foundation of the building is the soil the building is built on. As you breathe in and out, sensing your foot in your shoe, on the ground, through the floor, through the foundation, all the way down into the soils of the earth. As it continues to go down through the soils of the earth, all the way down into the waters of the earth. Sensing your foot on the ground, in your shoe, on the floor, on the foundation, through the soils, through the waters, all the way through the molten lava, down to the center of the earth. And as you sense your foot on the ground in your shoe, through the layers of the earth, all the way down to the center of the earth, just kind of sensing yourself receiving from the earth, coming up through the molten lava, through the waters, through the soil, the foundation, all the way up into your left foot, up through your ankle, your calf, your knee, your thigh, around the base of your spine, and all the way back down through the right thigh, knee, calf, ankle, foot, back all the way down through this foundation of the building, through the soils, the waters, the lava, back down around, coming back up the left side and going down the right, connecting you to the earth. And when you really feel that connection, I'm going to have you very slowly open your eyes and find a spot that you can gaze at that helps you feel this anchored connection, sense of being grounded and connected to the earth. Now we would call that your grounding spot. Does anybody want to say how that was? And that's something, you know, we can do, especially when we're preparing for a client that we have a little bit more activation with than some of the norm. Great, and I'm glad that was. So now what I'm going to ask you to do is to pair up. And we're going to do an exercise that's going to help us get a body-felt sense of really being in the dual attunement relationship and in the telecom. So see if you can pair up with somebody, and I'll show you what you're going to do. I need a volunteer first. Somebody, okay, here, go ahead. So what you're going to do is very, very slowly and gently, you're going to put the tip of your finger, put your index finger on, and you're going to connect, but you're not going to press hard. It's barely touching. Then you're going to both close your eyes and just notice what happens. And you're going to do that for a little bit, like for a minute or so. Okay? Now, did you think I was leading you? And I thought you were leading me. That's the dual attunement model. Okay, so pair up. See, I would suggest that you stand up because you want your arms to be loose. And if there's an odd person, then I can do it with the person. Not odd, as this. Does everybody have a partner? No? Okay. You want a partner? Okay. Do you want to do it? Okay, so just very gently, put your fingers gently touching. Close your eyes and notice what happens. can take another moment or two and then we'll come back to the room. So when you come to complete, share with each other how that was for you, and then we'll come back and share it with the group. So, how was that for y'all?
Oh, I was just thinking about couples and kind of letting them do that exercise and how hard it is not to kind of take over the other person's finger and we're going over here, you know? So how good that would be to help people realize how much they wish they were in control and they're not.
Anybody else? Sarah?
I had a very strong, immediate emotional reaction to a new friend. We don't speak the same language. And I touched her finger and felt an immediate electrical, powerful sense of her beauty. And it was pretty emotional, obviously. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Wow.
I speak English, but not very well. Today I came to my mind that I lost my dogma, like to go away from my house, and I was perturbed by this because I have doing something wrong, and I look some point to calm down. And show my mind, like, imagine my father and my mom when I was a child, like I did something wrong because I took the paper off my bag and throw away, and my document was together. And then when she said this, oh, I'm a good person. Sorry about the words.
That's beautiful.
In Brazil, we said foda-se. So, I'm a good person. Thank you.
You sure are. Indeed. Does anybody else want to say?
Is it normal to have a cooking sensation?
Is it normal to what?
Cooking sensation. That you're in the air and then you will go down to the earth.
You know, I love this exercise because it takes us all in so many different places, and it does get us into that floating because we're just having that very gentle touch and connection, and it kind of brings us to that all-connected space at the same time. But the thing is that when we're doing this, we're not sure who's leading and who's following. And that's really the dance of the brain spotting therapist. You know, because the patients come to us with what we may have, thinking we're going to help fix or change them, but we're really following them. But at the same time, we're holding that container for the work to happen. So this is a really great way for us to begin to drop into that body felt sense of who's leading and who's following, and to come to understand that level within our own bodies. It also, and because we don't know who's leading and who's following, it leads us to that uncertainty principle. So I wanted to offer that to you to get that felt sense of being grounded and connected in that larger space that we work in. So, we can, oh, right, I can do it. Okay. So we do that, no. Oh, that's all. So, grounding for us and the client is how do we take care of when we're out of the tail of the comet? So this gave us a sense of kind of being in that tail of the comet, being able to be in the flow. You know, but like as David was talking about, and we saw some of those fight, flight, and freeze, or really collapse. When I'm sitting in session and all of a sudden, you know, my mind is drifting and I'm thinking about, you know, my laundry list or my shopping list or whatever lists we might have in our brains. But I'm like disconnected. I left the session. Some of us might run first. Some of us, all of a sudden, you know, like I've got great theories and I got to explain to this person how to really understand themselves better. You know, there's times that we all need to do that. So, I'm going to ask you guys, what do you do to take care of yourself when you're out of that tail of the comet? And how are you aware of that? Are you guys really, like, always in? Do I say something?
No, I think by grounding.
By grounding yourself.
Noticing that I've either lost the track of what they're saying or distracting myself.
Right.
Breathing.
Right, breathing and tracking ourselves. So, you know, that's really important to notice that while we're giving session and working, not only are we tracking the client, but there's a constant inner observer that's tracking ourselves. And it's, you know, that's the gift of doing this work, is really tuning ourselves up. We become a tuning fork. There was actually a study at the National University of Ireland in Galway and the University of the College of Dublin that measured body-centered therapists that were working with trauma. And what they did it with a scale called the Egan and Carr Body-Centered Countertransference Scale. And what they noticed was that when people were in their countertransference, they were sleeping, they were tearful, they were getting digestive problems, they were getting stomach problems, they were getting headaches, unexpected body shifting a lot in session. So these are kind of like clues that, you know, when we're getting overly, you know, either too parasympathetic or too sympathetic ourselves. Oh, thank you. Okay. When we are getting too you know, when our parasympathetic is shutting down, we're getting too kind of dizzy, spacey, tired, or we're getting too agitating and we start jittering around a lot or getting too active with our clients. So then those are clues that it's our counter-transference issues that are coming up. And those are the things that we can earmark for later and then bring ourselves back into the tail of the comet. And then the other thing is important for us, you know, especially in between sessions and after sessions, to be mindful to really taking care of yourselves in terms of what you do to either like drink your water in between sessions, washing your hands. Think of the elements, you know, water, fire, air, earth, as quick ways for grounding. And some people like to light candles. It depends upon the population and where you're from to be able to do that or not. Sorry, in New York we talk really fast. So, the other thing is, how do we support the client when they're outside the window of tolerance? And these are some of the things that we already spoke about. But again, we don't want to jump in too fast, too soon. So that's where the uncertainty principle comes in. So we want to kind of just maybe offer a little something and then see how that goes. And that's, when we were talking before about in the middle of the session, what are some of the things that you can do? So we can, gentle ways of even leaning forward, getting more curious, maybe asking some more questions, mirroring back to the client the words that they use. Can be very grounding so that they know that you're there. When I'm working with parts of self-work, I may just say something like, can you hear my voice? I am here with you. It's very soothing and very grounding. And that's also a good way, or you may just notice that you want to just start by checking in with them. How you doing now? And then if you feel like you have to tighten it up, you go into tighten it up more. So I talked before about this segment. So if you want to do something like helping them ground, when you're scanning their body and looking at their body, just kind of like notice where you see maybe there's a certain level of ungroundedness. And this is something that as you're tracking, you can start to tune into. So you may notice that their head is kind of like a little bit more tilted, or you kind of sense that there's some disconnection. So you may just tell them to just gently roll your shoulders and notice what happens. Something to relieve this point where the stress is. So I think of grounding in terms of body segments. So you can just help them, so just as you breathe in, allow the air to come out through your throat. Come out, so you breathe in and just gently relax your jaw and breathe out. So you can open this whole thoracic area up. Or just, roll your head around. And so joints, moving any of our joints are really good ways to opening up the channels in the body again. So I was talking to Tomas about grounding yesterday, and he said with DID people, what he notices is if somebody feels that they're not connected, at least 51%, he will start to hone in with more grounding. And he has them literally press on their leg, when they're sitting, their fingers, like as if you're playing a piano. And based on how dysregulated they are, they will be able to move fast or slow. Even with that cross-patterning exercise that we spoke about before, when I worked with a dancer who feels that she's very coordinated, to cross-pattern crawl she was not capable of doing it because of the dissociation. So, not to assume anything. No, thank you for asking. No, the client, just have them very gently press on their leg. So we worked with the feet before. You can also work with the legs. There are different grounding exercises that people can do in between sessions. The other key is working with the senses. So I'll ask somebody, look around the room. Tell me 3 objects that are blue. Describe one to me. So I'm bringing in the eyes, and then I'm bringing in the here and now, the cognitive. Some people work with aromatherapy, and there you can bring in this sense of smell. I will tell people in between session, what is your favorite scent? get a little vial of that, like at the health food store, or if you know somebody that does Datura or Young Living, and put it at the tip of your nose, so that whenever, throughout the day, when you feel like you need it, just take a deep breath. So, because our olfactory goes straight through our brain, you know, to our sense of smell. The other thing is to have squeegee things or things that people can touch. I'll often give people a pillow so that they can squeeze it. Well, that's the other thing about grounding is some people work with grounding blankets. You can make a grounding pillow by using rice, stuffing a pillow, like a pillow with rice, and putting that on the feet of the person or putting that on their lap. It's very soothing. So we do work with the sound, but if people are dysregulated and they're not working with the sound, because often DID people do not like the sound, just tell them, notice what sounds you're hearing inside the room, notice what sounds you're hearing outside the room. Describe one of those sounds to me. To pulling in the senses. One sense or all of them? I'll generally pick one to use. One I think of in the moment. So, good question. Okay. So we're watching the reflexes. We have we're trusting the process. We're in attunement. We'll determine what you use. What are the grounding exercises? You can work more, I say explicit, but I mean overtly with the body posture, with the reflexes, and bringing them back into the here and now, or just in the attunement and in the connection. So sometimes I'll tighten up the attunement. I've noticed lately, do it one more time. One more, just one more. Go again. I'm going to just show you this exercise. Okay, so lately I've noticed my visual field and how I see the client, and somehow that the image of seeing the tail of a comet, I feel like I get my eyes focused, so I'm really in that tail and I narrow my vision. But there's other times where I like widen my vision. So this is a quick little exercise that we can do. Is just imagine yourself, you can close your eyes, just imagine as if you're pressing your eyes against a window. And so your eyes are pressed tight in front of the window. And then very slowly move them in the back of your head. And then just gently, when you do that, open your eyes. And notice how you see different, or not. But can you see how that softens your eye muscles? So you look with a softer gaze. And I think it's really important for us to notice how we are looking and at what angles and where we are looking when we're working with our clients. You can look back. Okay. So as a way to begin a session, we're focusing the work and what we're going to work on. So this is sort of a repetitive of thinking about the different parts of when we're grounding. We're staying attuned to the body, and we keep coming back to the body sensations. I will keep bringing people back to their body resource or to their body of things that I notice. I mean, of course, if it's going, smooth and fine, that's one thing. But a way to reground is to reground through the body. So we're working within the relationship, and we're working within the attuned connection. And as we spoke before, it's this electromagnetic field. And when we felt that, even when we were touching with the fingers, like what Sarah shares, it's just like you got this shock of who is right there in front of you. So, okay. So the, when we're making contact, we're really receiving and taking in the whole person. And we're listening below the story. So not to get caught in the words of what somebody's saying, but to get the felt, for you to experience and for you to use yourself as a tuning fork to experience the words that they're saying. Sometimes I don't fully listen to the words, but I listen to almost like the beat or the vibration to kind of like find where the charge is, where that the activation is in it, and then getting curious about that with the person. Okay. So the steps to transforming we work with is we are noticing, we are sensing, we're feeling. Then there's some interpretation towards the end of the session, and there's new awareness and understanding that comes up. And this is the organic flow of the process that we work with. And through this process, it's an extremely grounding process in terms of how we bring it back into our lives. So Steve has taught us this phrase, why am I talking? So this goes to the uncertainty principle. For us to really begin to think about, is this necessary? And David talked about it before in the lecture when he said, I had this great awareness, but then I catch myself not to say it, and the client goes someplace else. And I did a couple of sessions in supervision where we had the heart map hooked up with somebody. And as soon as the therapist said anything, it was disruptive. And I saw the same thing on a neurofeedback machine. Just like by me getting curious, thinking I'm supporting the person, it's just like, what? Like I popped her out of that deep state, subcortical level. So it's so important, and we see it, through these experiments. Experiences shape our thoughts, which shape our experience, but things happen to people, but we don't really know the why. And, sometimes people will come and they're talking to you, and as if they have to tell you everything, because they think like, okay, I spelled it all out, now you're going to fix it. But we can just sit there with that uncertainty, not knowing the why or what it all means, but we are with them, with their process. We can't change the ideas without a body felt sense and grounding. So this is really what we've been finding with brain spotting, is that the long-term change is being so effective because it's such an integrated model. So we're going to need to tie up in a second. So this, and for those that have the handouts, this is just teaching us about tracking, looking around the edges. This is where I had you look more softly. And also in terms of tracking, when something is too tense for somebody, I'll have them say, well, just go to like right before you're feeling that tension, just go to the edge of it. So you kind of help them come out of it, and that can help keep them grounded and in that window of tolerance. Make sense? Okay. So we're really shifting from the content to the form. So we're not so focused on the detail as much as the experience and tracking the flow through the session. And we're sitting with a lot of curiosity. So the parts of the brain, I'm just going to quickly go over this. You can go to the next one. So when you're thinking about different exercises to bring in, that's what these slides are for. I think about like the right-left connection. So anything that's going to, like the cross-patterning, opposite right with opposite, right and left, opposite hand with opposite leg, any form of that you want to bring in, or squeezing your fingers, which is an old EMDR kind of technique, squeezing first the right and then the left, or tapping your right side and your left side. So that helps with the right-left. In terms of the brain stem, you want to maybe bring awareness into the breathing, into some more of the visceral, body felt sense feelings that are going on. Working with a grounding spot, like what we had done when we did that earth breathing exercise. And when your clients are feeling numb or more dissociated, I showed you that pressing, but I also have them touch or squeeze themselves. Sometimes, that's where it's like, do you want me to sit closer to you? So you're going to start to work with distance and your presence, and really the engagement of the relationship. But I just want you to begin to think about the brain in terms of what parts of the brain. Sometimes we want to work really more with the cognitive and bring back on that frontal cortex to help calm somebody down. So I just sort of broke it down from the right side to visualization, more mindfulness, working with the senses, where the left side is maybe more linear, where we're asking them to observe and describe something or describe an object. So I'll just say, can you really describe in great detail what you're looking at? And so I think that's it for now. So we do need to end. Are there any last minute questions or comments? Feedback, thoughts, ideas? Good to go? Okay. Thank you for coming and
I have
taking
some.
speech time out.
Thank you.
We want to thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you very much, Cynthia. And we have the certificate for you.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you everybody for all your energy and your participation.